For a variety of reasons, of course. One is to continue reporting the news, which is our job, and secondly, because of something that an American historian once said to me many years ago, that the television set is roughly equivalent to a campfire in the days as the wagon trains were making their way westward, and there was a catastrophe on the trail, and so people pulled the wagons around and sat down and discussed what went on and tried to understand it, and then went on the next day. And we do that in front of our television sets now in large measure today. We did it, you'll recall, at the time of the Challenger. We did it when President Kennedy was assassinated. We've done it in any number of incidents, whether we're working on television or watching television or contributing to it in some way. This is, in some respects, the national campfire, to use that analogy. And one of the things we try to do at the moment is to reach out and, not in any scientific way, try to understand how people are feeling about this. Not just the man on the street interviews, which we'll get to in just a second, they're so important, but in terms of trying to understand what people's attitudes are about things. And so we did a poll. An ABC News poll has already been conducted, one of them. And you may find it interesting. One of the questions asked, did the United States do all it could, reasonably could, excuse me, to prevent these attacks? And there's a split right down the middle. 43% say yes, and 44% say no. Here's something very interesting. We asked people whether or not they had confidence in the United States to find and punish those who were responsible. And we asked people whether they were very confident or somewhat confident, and quite an astonishing 91% said yes, and only 9% said they had little or no confidence. Were people willing to give up some liberties? It's been a point of discussion throughout the day. Were people willing to give up some liberties to support a crackdown on terrorism? 66% in this poll, very quick poll. It's a limited number of people, only 600 people interviewed, plus or minus 4%, all those usual admonitions about it. But 66% of people said they would support sacrificing some of their liberties in order to crack down on international terrorism, on terrorism in general, and 24% said no. Would you support military action against groups or actions responsible? 94% said yes, and 3% said no. Would you support military reprisals even if it could mean war? And maybe this is not a surprise in the intensity of these early hours. 86% said yes, and 7% said no. Fair to point out that none of us have any understanding of what a definition of war is at the moment. The last time the United States went to war was in the Persian Gulf, and it was by conventional war standards, it was fairly casualty free for the United States, and we didn't even do as much, the United States didn't do as much damage to the Iraqis as they had originally anticipated. Concerned about future terrorist attacks here? Back to the poll very briefly, two more questions, Andy. Concerned about future terrorist attacks here? 87% of the people we asked said yes. Seems like a sensible answer given what's happened today, and 12% said no. And worried? And this is where we've talked extensively today, or not extensively, but occasionally, about the effect on the national psychology. Are you worried, or you or someone close to you may be victimized? And 47% said yes, and 52% said no. So that's what we find in an early poll from our polling institute today, asking those very obvious questions in the wake of these attacks in New York and outside Washington today.